drift into the origins of the Indus Valley Civilization or the Harappan Civilization. Okay, Harappan Civilization origin to কি ধরনের? See, before we go into the origins of the Indus Valley Civilization, I have already hinted to you guys how political outlooks have from time to time, colored our way of looking at history. History writing is, to a great extent, is a dialogue where a person tries to interpret the past with reference to the present. You cannot escape your present and look at the past in isolation. The political environment, the socio-cultural environment that you live in always has had an impact in the way in which you write history. In fact, your belief system, suppose you are a believer in a particular kind of political ideology, maybe you are a believer in Marxism, in materialistic dualism. So your way of looking at history will have to a great extent an affinity with how the Marxists understand the movement of history. There are certain ideas among Marxist scholars how a society transforms from one form to another form. ঠিক আছে, মই তাৰ বিষয়ে তোমালোকক বুজাইছো বেস সুপারস্ট্রাকচার মডেল, মনত আছে না? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
আজিৰ কাৰণে simply এইখিনি কথা জানিবা, you cannot escape your political convictions and the ideological milieu that you come from when you are looking at any problem. And I'm not just talking about history. Even in science and technology, ideology plays a part. ঠিক আছে, মানুহে যদি ম্যাথমেটিক্স করে তাতেও ideology ঘুমাই থাকে. Those things you guys will learn with the passage of time. You will learn all of those things, but for now you will have to focus on history. Now see, the discovery of the Indus Valley Civilization, meaning proper excavations of the Indus Valley Civilization, as far as the discovery is concerned, it took place in the 1820s itself. 1820s hote arambho hoisil discovery when a person called Charles Mason suddenly stumbled upon the site of Harappa. He stumbled upon this site. He did not know that this was the site of an ancient civilization. Similarly, Sir Alexander Cunningham, who was the director general of the ASI, in fact the first director general of the ASI, he also started excavation at the site of Harappa, but he was completely ignorant of the fact that it was a new civilization that he was discovering. He was thinking that he was discovering a Buddhist stupa, okay, that it was a Buddhist site. So the discovery took place quite a bit earlier, but a proper excavation began in the 1920s. What does it tell you? In what kind of a political environment are these discoveries taking place?
Colonial.
Meaning beginning in the 1820s to 1920s. Colonialism, yes, that is the key word. See, these discoveries took place within a colonial milieu, and therefore the colonial mindset, the mindset that the East is an inferior place, meaning anything that lies beyond Turkey. All right, Turkey, if we take Turkey as the division line between the West and the East, anything that lies beyond Turkey is a land of despotism, a land of barbarism, a land which is significantly poorer in all qualitative aspects than the West. Okay, that is the colonial mindset. And why are the colonializers colonizing us? The colonializers are colonizing us in order to do what? To civilize us. Exactly, to civilize us. Okay, very good. So what indeed does this tell you about the discovery of the Indus Valley Civilization? Are these people going to give in to the fact that even before the discovery of agricultural life in the West, even before the discovery of agricultural life in the West, there were civilizations in the East? Are they going to take this fact standing straight, or are they going to bend themselves, or are they going to create certain ideological traps for us students to fall into? They are most certainly going to create certain ideological traps. See, the colonizers or colonial historiography was not willing to accede to the fact that India could develop a civilization which was far more advanced than all other civilizations of that time period, in complete absence of any influence from outside, completely independently and completely indigenously. That was not something that we have to or we can expect from the colonial mindset, and that is what happened. Therefore, we start to see that some of the earliest ideas about the origins of the Indus Valley civilization were colonial in nature, whereby the belief was that the Indus Valley civilization did not emerge independently, but in fact, the idea of civilization or civilization itself was brought into India by outsiders, sometimes even referred to as colonizers. These scholars would sometimes refer to these outsiders as colonizers who had come into India, colonized this region of the Indus Valley, and for what? For trade purposes, for resources. And here, when these people settled down in their colonies, they built a civilization on the model of whichever civilization they came from. Okay, and now what civilizations do these do these kind of theories refer to as the patrilineal civilization, or sorry, as the father civilization, suppose we call that for now. I am not getting the proper word, but anyway, so kuntu civilization boli kobo. What are the two contemporary civilizations that we know of with which Indus Valley civilization had connection?
Mesopotamia.
Mesopotamia and Egypt, right? একেবারে কনক্লুসিভ এভিডেন্স কার লগত আছে, মানে কোনটো সিভিলাইজেশনৰ লগত কানেকশন থকা বুলি কনক্লুসিভ এভিডেন্স আছে? মেসোপটেমিয়াৰ লগত আছে।
Mesopotamian.
So of course they are going to say that the Mesopotamian civilization was the father of the Indus Valley civilization, and that the Indus Valley civilization either drew ideas from the Mesopotamian civilization, or people from Mesopotamia colonized the Indus Valley civilization or colonized the Indus region for resources and later build a civilization. So civilization was an import in India. Then, of course, as historiography changed, as people started to look at history differently with the passage of time, we now start to get another set of scholars who assert that Indus Valley civilization was not a civilization that was brought up from outside. In fact, Indus Valley civilization developed out of the agricultural communities that started to come up in the northwest of India by around 7000 to 5000 BC. ঠিক আছে, 7000 পৰা 5000 BC লৈকে যোনবোৰ যোনবোৰ settlements আহা আৰম্ভ হৈছিল, these settlements, because of the rise of an economic surplus through agriculture, they slowly and gradually did transform into the Indus Valley civilization through a long period of around 2000 to 3000 years. This civilization has got nothing to do in its emergence as far as Mesopotamia is concerned, neither any other civilization, that it was completely indigenous, it was distinctive, and its features make it completely distinguishable from other civilizations. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Very good. From an exam perspective, why is there a debate regarding the rise of the Indus Valley civilization? Why? First question that should come to your mind from an exam perspective is, why is there a debate? Why should there be a debate about the rise of the Indus Valley civilization? Well, the answer is very simple. The answer is, staring you right at your noses. See, as I already told you when we were just introducing the topic today, the Harappan civilization, most of the evidence concerning the Harappan civilization comes from the mature phase of the Harappan civilization. Is it not? Right? Most of the sites that we have discovered belong to the mature phase of the Indus Valley civilization, the Harappan civilization. Also, you have to understand that people are more fascinated with the mature phase because it, of course, exposes various features which we find commonly in today's societies, and that actually fascinates us. Okay, and therefore there has been a greater thirst to discover the mature phase rather than the early phase of the Indus Valley civilization. All right, meaning, as you can see in the various points that I have given, the academic and archaeological focus has been overwhelmingly biased towards study of the mature phase of the Harappan civilization. This has led to a gap in the study of what has been referred to as the early Harappan phase. All right, and there are various reasons why mature phase of iman target kore. Mature phase of target kora karon to eituke we are fascinated with the mature phase of the Harappan civilization. It actually teaches us a lot about the dynamics of how civilizations come about and how they function, and therefore we study it more, but not so much the early phase of the Indus Valley civilization or the Harappan civilization. Now again, the focus has been more towards horizontal excavation and unearthing the sprawl of the civilization rather than the vertical excavation, which would give us a better chronological understanding of the civilization's origin and evolution. Meaning, uh, have I not already told you that the Indus Valley civilization is 1.2 million square kilometers in its diameter? I did, right? How do we know that? Because we have been obsessed with discovering the farthest points of the Indus Valley civilization. We horizontally excavate the Indus Valley civilization. Kiman dangor hoy civilization khone etu sabor kar. Even in fact, when we find a new site, we try to determine how large is this site, because Indus Valley civilization cities were fairly large cities, bahut dangor cities asil. So we are obsessed with finding how large is this city. We come to know Rakhi Garhi is the largest city of the Indus Valley civilization discovered so far. ঠিক আছে? So our attempt is to horizontally excavate it, not vertically. Aru, as I have told you about archaeology, how archaeologists discover different phases by looking at the vertical strata, right? I did tell you how archaeological digs are made and how different time periods are buried as different stratas. In each strata, we find cultures, right? হয় না মনত আছে নাই?
Yes, sir.
So indeed, we are not digging deep enough. We have not been digging deep enough and unearthing the early phases of the Indus Valley civilization, which will tell us how it did evolve into the civilization that we see in the mature phase. Okay, understood till now? So Bujisa?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now again, the origins of the civilization has also been obscured. It has also been obscured by historiographical and historical context of its discovery and subsequent study. I already gave you a brief introduction about it. The context in which it was discovered, the historiographical traditions under which it was discovered. Everybody was writing colonial history and defending colonialism at that point in time when it was discovered. So it was no surprise that its discovery prompted this ideological exercise to defend the idea that the Indus Valley civilization was indeed a colonial civilization and imported civilization. Okay, so it is no surprise that this would again obscure the real nature of the evolutionary phenomena which resulted in the rise of the Indus Valley civilization. Now again, these are some of the important reasons behind which the actual mechanism of the growth and development of the Indus Valley civilization are hidden behind. Okay, now let us look at the debates concerning the Indus Valley civilization's origin. There are in particular two sets of theories. We can divide the theories of or concerning the origins of the Indus Valley civilization into two sets or two compartments, and these two sets are the diffusionist theories and the indigenous theories. Okay, the indigenous theories come from an evolutionary perspective. It believes that societies evolve over time, and through an evolutionary scale we see the emergence of civilizations. All right, these indigenous perspective of development of civilization, the scholars who talk about it, they believe in the local emergence of civilization. They do not think that jodi agriculture koroba develop hoise অন্য জায়গাত ডেভেলপ হবৰ কাৰণে আইডিয়াটো সেই য'ত প্ৰথমবাৰৰ কাৰণে ডেভেলপ হৈছে তাৰ পৰা আইডিয়াটো আহিব লাগিব. They think that there can be spontaneous development of societies. Diffusionist theories, on the other hand, believe in foreign origin of the Indus Valley civilization. They talk about the Mesopotamian origins of the Indus Valley civilization. They believe in a colonial perspective of the development of civilization. Let us look at the diffusionist theories first. আৰু প্ৰথমতে আমি dismantle কৰি চাওঁ diffusionist theories লগত problem কি আছে তাক এবাৰ আমি just let us try and dismantle this kind of theories. Diffusionist arguments rely on the assumption that socio-economic developments have a single point of origin from where these traits are then diffused to other geographies. ঠিক আছে মানে যিকোনো socio-economic বা technological, I forgot to write the word technological or technical also, ইয়াতে technological to add কৰি দিবা ঠিক আছে socio-economic বা technological socio-economic হোক বা technological developments বোৰ হোক, they have single point origins, এটা জায়গাত জন্ম হয় আৰু পিছত এই developments বোৰ they spread out to other geographies and other regions. But there are problems with this form of arguments. What are these problems? See, first thing is they negate spontaneity, meaning they negate the idea that there is a concept or a proclivity for spontaneous innovations within society, that societies cannot spontaneously innovate. All right, that's what their belief is. Okay, society ekhone spontaneously innovate koribo noare. And it's if you look at it logically also, it's actually a fallacious argument. Jodi tumaloke logically swa, but kune kune logic baru collegeot korisa etu different kotha hoy, but it's a fallacious argument anyway. Another problem with this kind of argument is that adoption versus innovation or eta dichotomy ani diya amak ei dhoroner argument. Okay, they bring in a dichotomy of adoption versus innovation. They believe or their trust is more towards adoption, that societies adopt rather than innovate. Okay, কিন্তু ইয়াতে এটা problem আছে, societies really do not adopt traits which are not utilitarian. এখন সোসাইটিয়ে কেতিয়াও এনেকুৱা ট্ৰেটছ তুলি নলয় যদি সেই ট্ৰেটটোৰ কোনো ইউটিলিটি নাথাকে। ইকনমিক ইউটিলিটি নাথাকিব পাৰে, কিন্তু কিছু ট্ৰেটছৰ সোশ্যাল ইউটিলিটি থাকে, কিছু ট্ৰেটছৰ কালচাৰেল ইউটিলিটি থাকে, ঠিক আছে। But a society will pick up a trait, a development from outside only when it has a utility. Adoption is never a matter of imposition. It has to come, the trust has to come from within the societies that a particular kind of innovation is coming in. Next, generalizations based on similarities. When these kind of arguments are made, remember, they always point towards similarities. They will point towards such surface similarities, such as look at the script. The script of the Mesopotamians is pictographic. The script of the Indus Valley Civilization is also pictographic. All right, they are both scripts that rely on symbols to express meaning. Okay, so these kind of surface similarities are pointed at, but they will never point out to the fact that they are making a wide generalization. ঠিক আছে, এটা দুটা ট্রেট সিমিলার হব পাৰে, but what about the myriad of dissimilarities? Uniqueness যোনটো আছে সেইটোৰ কথা নকয়, ঠিক আছে। This kind of arguments point towards surface similarity. By that I mean যদি স্ক্রিপ্টটো পিক্টোগ্রাফিক হয়, the similarity ends there. The similarity between the Indus script and the Mesopotamian cuneiform script, it ends there and then itself. There are no more similarities between these two types of scripts. বুঝিছা? বুঝিছা না নাই?
Yes, sir.
Generalization is a form of argument in which you generalize based on cherry pick data, and you set aside all the other data that proves the contrary of the point that you are making. ঠিক আছে? When you cherry pick a set of data trying to prove a point, you do what? You negate all other points that are proving or disproving your point, actually, that are disproving your point or proving a contrarian point. So that kind of generalizations are also being made in such kind of arguments. Next, this kind of scholarship focuses or have a perspective which actually promotes an understanding to ki hoy one way interaction or understanding. Okay, that when two societies they interact with each other, suppose Mesopotamian society is interacting with Indus Valley society, we know that for certain. ঠিক আছে, আমি একদম 100% সার্টেন হয় এইটো বিষয়। But what is the dialogue like? Is it a one-way dialogue, meaning everything is being imported from Mesopotamia? All the ideas are Mesopotamian that are being imported into India? Or is it a two-way dialogue that Indian civilization is also affecting or also fundamentally changing the Mesopotamian civilization? It most certainly, in any kind of relationship, relationships are usually two-way. All of you know that, right? In your interpersonal relationship also, when it is a one-way relationship, you want to get out of that relationship as fast as possible, right? So that's it. They focus in a one-way dialogue. ঠিক আছে, it's not even a dialogue, one-way monologue of civilizational exchange. কালচাৰেল এক্সচেঞ্জটো ওৱান ৱে হয় তেখেতসকলৰ মতে। ঠিক আছে, তেখেতসকলৰ মতে এটা ডাইকটমি আছে, ডোনাৰ এণ্ড ৰিচিপিয়েণ্ট ডাইকটমি, that there is a donor civilization and there is a recipient civilization. Donor culture, recipient culture, and the donor culture gives certain stuff to the recipient culture. The recipient culture adopts those things without any qualification. Okay, meaning without making any kind of qualification based on utility, they just simply adopt it. And based on generalizations of this adoption, we call civilizations as diffuse civilization. So that is indeed their argument. Okay, it's very simple to understand and very simple to dismantle actually. And this kind of arguments you are going to encounter throughout your study of history. I am giving you just the necessary ammunition to dismantle this kind of argument. Sometimes what will happen is you will come across a particular question, গোটেই এনসারটো নাজানা, তুমি খালি এটা সাইড জানা, সেই এনসারটো এটা পক্ষ এটা জানা, কিন্তু তোমালোকৰ কুৱেশ্যনটো সুধিছে ক্ৰিটিকেল এনালিচিছৰ। এনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ কিছু যদি আৰ্গুমেণ্টছ তোমালোকৰ ইনভেন্টৰীত আছে, এট that point of time you can deploy these arguments to create the counter narrative. ঠিক আছে, কাউন্টাৰ নেৰেটিভটো তোমালোকে এনসাৰটো নাজানা কৈও ক্ৰিয়েট কৰিব পাৰা, কি ঠিক এক মাৰ্ক তোমালোকে পাই যোৱা এফৰ্টটোৰ কাৰণে, জাষ্ট ফৰ দ্য এফৰ্ট। বাট এনিৱে, historiographical contextor kothao sai lo. Through stratigraphic studies conducted at Harappan sites. Stratigraphic studies meaning studies which look at the different cultural stratas of Harappan sites. Okay, it has been assumed that civilization arose suddenly and evolved fairly rapidly. কিয়? কাৰণ তললৈকে তো খোজ পৰাই নাই। All right, vertical excavation is lacking in these sites, and therefore jetia they start to observe civilizational traits, they already find it in a mature form. All right, they do not see the evolution because stratigraphic study is incomplete in these sites. All right, this gives rise to the notion that civilization was crafted by a people who were already familiar with the core concepts of civilization building. See, the early stratigraphic studies of the Indus Valley sites revealed a civilization that seemed to have come up from nowhere and rise very rapidly. All right, why was it so? Because stratigraphic context to missing us, they had not dug deep enough to unearth the pre-Harappan cultures in the same sites. সেইবোৰ সাইটছতে প্ৰি হাৰাপ্পান কালচাৰো আছে, এইটোৰ ওপৰত কিমান ভালকে ষ্টাডি কৰা নাই। And that's why they believe that it is being brought, civilization is being brought into India by a people who already were knowledgeable in the various ingredients that are needed to craft a civilization. All right, the Harappan civilization also existed parallelly with the Mesopotamian civilization and had fairly well developed trade relations with each other. Thus, the Harappan civilization was seen as a colonial offshoot of the Mesopotamian civilization. Indeed, there were several similarities shared by both civilizations. Jetia diffusionist arguments dia hol, tetia kichu similarities or pino to point koriba. I already told you that they make generalizations based on surface similarities. Let us look at what similarities they are talking about, and let us dismantle these arguments also one by one based on the evidence, the material evidence that we have from the Indus Valley civilization or the Harappan civilization's sites. What are these similarities they point towards? They point towards an urban life with monumental architecture. Actually, the similarity completely ends there. They would say that Indus Valley civilization was an urban civilization, just like the Mesopotamian civilization. In the Mesopotamian civilization, we find monumental architecture such as the ziggurats, in the Indus Valley civilization, we find monumental architecture in the form of the inner cities, or sorry, upper cities. ঠিক আছে, the upper cities. Upper city মানে Indus Valley civilization cities were divided into two parts. All of you know that, I believe, right? The lower city, which were for commoners, and the upper city, it is surmised that upper city elites would থাকা আছে. And most of the public buildings, the religious buildings, are located in the upper city. These buildings were monumental in nature, while lower city থকা buildings like utilitarian in nature আছে. ঠিক আছে, utilitarian মানে dwelling houses, small workshops, etc., etc., smaller in size, etc., and monumental হলে ভব্য, ঠিক আছে, something which impresses. In fact, they will also say that Indus Valley civilization used burnt bricks, meaning তোমার oven fired bricks use করি আছে, kiln fired bricks use করি আছে, and the Mesopotamian civilization also was using burnt bricks. But the similarity, my dear fellows, and here the type of monumental architecture, there are no similarities in that. We do not find a great bath or a great bath like structure in Mesopotamia. Neither do we find structures like the great granary in Mesopotamia. We do not find the dockyard of Lothal or any kind of cognate in Mesopotamia. That's about it. We do not find similar pyramids in Indus Valley civilization. There are no pyramids in Mesopotamian civilization. Pyramidal structures are present there. ঠিক আছে, বুঝিছানে নাই? When it comes to urban life, yes, thank you. When it comes to urban life, yes, there was urban life in Mesopotamia also, but the Mesopotamian urban life was not well planned. They did not have the concept of town planning, did they? They did not. Their cities were haphazardly built. There was no grid pattern in their cities, no right angle intersection in their roads. All right, so that's about it. Okay, there was urban life and there were monumental architecture in both civilizations, but the similarity ends there. Similarly, another point is say that both used irrigation. Yes, we find evidence of irrigation in the Indus Valley civilization also. Dholavira sailo, Dholavira ami water tanks paisu, reservoirs paisu. ঠিক আছে, কালিবাঙ্গানত কব পারা যায় কে যদি কালিবাঙ্গানত ফারোজ আছে, there were pharaohs discovered in Kalibangan, meaning এখন এগ্ৰিকালচাৰৰ ফিল্ড পাইছে য'ত এনেকুৱা ফারোজ আছে। আমি এতিয়াও দেখা পাওঁ এই ফারো বিলাকত সেয়া ৰু চব্জি ৰু, ৰাইট? তো এনেকুৱা ফারোজ দেখা পাইছে। এই ফারো কিয় ক্ৰিয়েট কৰা যায়? ইভেন টুডে দিস ফারোজ আর ক্ৰিয়েটেড সো দ্যাট ওয়াটার চ্যানেল ফর্ম হয়, যোনটোৰে পানী পঠিয়াব পাৰি, which shows that the people are practicing irrigation also. All right, apart from just plow agriculture হৈ আছে বুলি তো কয়, it points towards plow agriculture, that's true, but it also points towards irrigation because the furrows, they represent water channels. All right, but yes, jodio Indus Valley civilization, even if the Indus Valley civilization or Harappan civilization is using irrigational techniques in their agriculture, the similarity ends there. The Mesopotamians were masters of canal irrigation. All right, they created networks of canals. In fact, irrigational techniques of the Mesopotamian civilization has much to do in the rise of the civilization itself, the rise of complexity in the Indus Valley civilization, rise of political power in not Indus Valley, Mesopotamian civilization, rise of political power in Mesopotamian civilization. All of this has to do with their irrigation system. Okay, we will not talk about that because that is outside your syllabus, but jana to bhal. Anyway, irrigation kora আছে in Mesopotamian civilization, but the irrigation we see in the Mesopotamian civilization is canal irrigation. Out here in the Indus Valley civilization, we find reservoirs and tanks. We find channels, not canals. We find sheet irrigation. Sheet irrigation. See, Mesopotamian, Harappan cities were built on raised platforms. Suppose this is the city of Mohenjo-daro, very crude drawing, but this is the fortified city of Mohenjo-daro. It is built on a raised platform. Why is it built on a raised platform? Because they know that the river is going to flood itself in the summers. Okay, and after the river water recedes, it will deposit a layer of silt. This is irrigation, my dear friend. This is known as sheet irrigation, and that is the kind of irrigation that is being practiced in Indus Valley civilization, not the same as that being practiced in Mesopotamian civilization. Followed? Bujila?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Use of bronze. certain scholars will point out that both civilizations were Bronze Age civilizations and both used bronze. Yes, we know that the Indus Valley or the Harappan people had knowledge of the making of bronze, how to combine copper and tin, in what quantities to combine them, and to extract bronze. But they were nowhere near the technical development of the Mesopotamians. The Mesopotamians were extracting a fine quality of bronze. The Harappans were developing a very crude form of bronze. In fact, the Harappans did not even use bronze preponderantly. They were more reliant on copper. They were using bronze, but not much for agricultural purposes, only for casting and such. ঠিক আছে? Only for creating craft, etc. Agriculture বহুত কম use হয়েছে Harappan civilization of bronze. ঠিক আছে? বুঝিছেন না? So even here there is lack of similarity. Now, use of pictographic script. Yes, the Indus Valley civilization people use pictographic script. The Mesopotamians, they did use pictographic script. Again, the similarity ends here. First of all, we do not know, or we cannot take the help of the Mesopotamian script to decipher the Indus Valley script. So how can these two scripts be similar? If they were similar, there would be clues in the Mesopotamian cuneiform script which will help us decipher the Indus Valley script. The Indus Valley script is said to be bostrofedon in characteristics. It is said to be logographic in characteristics. These characteristics are not shared by the cuneiform script.
Yes,
Able
sir.
শব্দবোৰ যে use কৰি আছো, I will teach you properly about these words that I have just used: bostrofedon, logosyllabic, logographic. I will teach you when I'm talking about the script of the Indus Valley civilization. So do not be worried. Don't be worried at all. Now, about seals. All of you have seen Indus Valley civilization seals? Yes?
Yes.
Meaning not pratyekha, but you have seen it in pictures. There are these seals located in the National Museum in Delhi also. Very beautiful seals. What are these seals made of? Primarily, the Harappan seals. What are they made of? Primarily, I mean, you will find, huh? Sorry? Steatite or soapstone. ঠিক আছে, a stone that can be easily carved. All right, যোনটো lithic industry part আছে. There was a lithic industry in the Harappan civilization, meaning an industry where stone based objects were made. Seals were part of this lithic industry or lithic craft technology of that point of time. All right, and most of these seals are made of steatite. Now, apart from steatite, you will find seals made of terracotta also. You will find seals made of bronze also. ঠিক আছে? However, when we look at the Mesopotamian seals, a majority of these seals are made out of clay. Mesopotamian seals are cylindrical in shape. Majority of the Mesopotamian seals are cylindrical in shape, while the Indus seals are quadrilateral, having 4 sides. Most of these seals, some are triangular, some are circular, some are even cylindrical, but majority is quadrilateral. The design based motifs of the Mesopotamian seals are completely different from the motifs of MOTIFS, not MOTIVES. The motifs of the Harappan seals are completely different. They had the same purpose. They were made to identify. All right, they were made in order to have give impressions. Meaning seal to use for it to impress something on to other materials. All right, impress the design onto other materials. They fulfill the same basic necessity, but their construction is different, their nature is different. Okay, getting my point?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now, lastly, they will also point towards wheel-made pottery, that both civilizations used wheel-made pottery. Well, again, the similarity ends there. Yes, wheel-made pottery, but Indus Valley civilization's pottery was very, very well refined. Indus Valley civilization's pottery was completely distinct in its design features, in its glazing, in its material. It was completely distinct. All right. So as far as the diffusionist arguments based on similarities go, here is the end of those arguments. Now let us look at certain particular arguments. ঠিক আছে, কিছুমান মানুহৰ arguments কথা শুনিম। But anyway, let us proceed. Based on such evidences, it has been surmised by scholars such as E.J.H. Mackey that the Harappan civilization was the result of contact by invading peoples from Uruk. Now, Uruk is a city state or was a city state within the Mesopotamian civilization. People from Uruk invaded this region, and through contact with these invaders, the Indus Valley civilization people or the Harappan people, they learned about civilizational traits. They learned how to build civilization from contact with invaders. All right, and therefore these interactions led to the people of the subcontinent being exposed to civilizational traits, and they started to build civilizations in India. That's what E.J.H. Mackay is saying. Mr. D.H. Gordon takes this argument a bit further. What is Mr. Gordon stating? Mr. Gordon states that there was or have been an actual migration of people, that people did migrate from the Mesopotamian civilization into the region of northwestern Indian subcontinent, and here they built a civilization. Why did they migrate? They did migrate because of resources. The Mesopotamian region lacked certain resources. One of the resources that we can point out is that Mesopotamian region lacked timber, wood. The Mesopotamian region also lacked stones, and the people might have come here, migrated here for such resources, and then they decided to, okay, we will build colonies out here. We stay back, and they build colonies, and then these colonies transform themselves into the great cities that we observe today. Now that's what Mr. D.H. Gordon is saying. He takes the argument a step further and suggests that there might have been an actual migration of people from Mesopotamia who formed a colonial offshoot in the Indian subcontinent. Yes, Buddhi sir?
Yes,
Buddhi
sir.
sir? Okay.
Buddhi Paisa.
Now finally, let us understand the mind of Mr. Mortimer Wheeler, one of the most influential archaeologists of the colonial times. ठीक है से? What did Mortimer Wheeler say? Mr. Wheeler suggests that although there might not have been any migration of people, but he suggests that there might have been a migration of ideas. He talks about a phenomena known as migration of ideas. According to him, the third to second millennia BC was a time period in the history of the development of human societies in which the idea of civilization was floating around in the air. That civilizations had started to emerge in the Middle East, and these ideas of civilization started to float around in the air and make their incursion into different geographies. And such a floating of ideas and settling down of these ideas in the Indus region resulted in the creation of the Indus Valley civilization of the Harappan civilization. Getting my point?
Sir, floating of ideas mane?
Very good. Floating of ideas meaning, again, transference of idea. See, according to him, civilization as a principle, as an idea, had already come up. As an idea meaning that so and so would constitute a civilization, because civilizations had already formed in the Middle East. ठीक है sir, Levantot civilization I say in the form of the Mesopotamian civilization, right? Even in Africa, northern Africa, Egyptot civilization I say, right? And from these civilizations, the basic idea of civilization, that people can come together, live in closed communities, in dense communities, all right, and people can have craft specialization, these kind of ideas, right? All of the ideas that we associate with civilization, these ideas started to do the rounds in the world, meaning through contact with people. See, people of Egypt, they move out to some other place, all right, they move out to some other place in search of trade, and they meet other people there. They spread their ideas of how they live, all right, what kind of society they come from, and these ideas are picked up by other people, and then these other people also start to work upon the building of civilization. Getting my point? What a migration of idea might mean?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Let us proceed forward. It indigenous based argument black sound.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let
Okay,
us
sir.
look at the indigenous arguments, indigenous origin based arguments, the arguments which stress upon evolutionary principle. Okay. See, the proponents of this set of theories consider the long history of agricultural societies in the northwestern region of India. As I already told you, the northwestern region of India was the region in which Neolithic societies, agricultural societies were the first to emerge. All right. I gave you the name of Mehergarh also. There were other sites also, such as Kila Gul Muhammad, Rana Gundai, Mundigak, right? In our previous classes. So these are certain sites in which agriculture emerged at its earliest phase. And these sites, mind you, are located in the same vicinity of where later the Indus Valley civilization or the Harappan civilization comes up. ठीक है? It is in the same vicinity, same locality, same region. Okay. And this gives us a clue that why not, or why can't we consider these sites as lying in the same evolutionary scale as the sites of the mature phase of the Harappan civilization. Okay, they are of the belief, meaning the people who proposed an indigenous origin of the Indus Valley civilization, they are of the belief that all the ingredients for the independent origin of a civilization, junkheni ingredients lage independent origin of a civilization, agriculture, a sources of water, a geographical region which supports agriculture, socio-cultural complexity, technical and technological developments, all of these ingredients which are needed for the rise of a civilization, they were present in this region. And their argument is that it is indeed these societies, agricultural societies, which through continuity and innovation, these agricultural societies did not dissolve after so and so period of time. They continued in some form or the other, and through innovation, they transformed into a civilizational society. Indeed, one of the first scholars who made such an assertion that the Indus Valley civilization is a distinct culture. It is a distinct culture. We cannot conflate it with other cultures. Say, for example, the Mesopotamian culture. Okay, এনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ assertion দিয়া. One of the first person who made this kind of assertion was none other than the then or the contemporary Director General of the ASI, Mr. John Marshall or Sir John Marshall. Okay, who in a report in the 1920s talked about the distinct nature of the Harappan civilization. His views were later shared by Mr. Gordon Childe, about whom we have talked in length. All right, and also by later scholars such as Stuart Pigot. These group of people believe that there are no parallels of the Indus Valley civilization in their contemporary world. Okay, in that contemporary time, the Indus Valley civilization was unique, and if it was unique, that means that its origin must also be unique. Okay, if the cultural traits of the Indus Valley civilization are unique, then its origins must also be unique. So that's the kind of assertion which we start to see emerge fairly early. Even in the colonial context itself, we start to see this kind of ideas emerging. However, it will take some time for these kind of ideas to take root. It took some time for these ideas to take root, because although Mr. John Marshall was asserting a distinct evolution of the Indus Valley civilization, he did not or could not clarify the actual mechanism or give any kind of evidence regarding his assertion. Okay, later scholars will come up with new evidences which will suggest more and more that his assertion might have been correct. Let us look at who these scholars were and what kind of evidence are we talking about. In the 1920s itself, Mr. N.G. Majumdar, he was starting to make a study of pottery found at a particular site known as Amri. Okay? And the pottery that we found in this site lay in the pre-Harappan layers. Okay, pre-Harappan strata pottery. And this culture, he named this culture as the Amri culture. And he later asserted that pottery, which shared similar cultural traits, are or can also be found in Harappan sites of the Sindh region. Sindh region of থকা যোনবোৰ Harappan sites আছে, তাতে Amri pottery লগত characteristic share কৰা pottery পোৱা যায় in the pre-Harappan layer. Okay, so this would go on to suggest that in the pre-Harappan phase, there was a culture in these regions. এই Harappan sites বোৰ য'ত য'ত আহিছে, সেই sites বোৰৰ তলত এটা distinct culture এটা সোমাই আছে। তেখেতে নাম দিছিল Amri culture. অলৰাইট তেখেতে কৈছিল কি এই আমৰি কালচাৰটো অকল আমৰিত নহয় আমি সিন্ধত থকা বিভিন্ন হাৰাপ্পান সাইটছৰ প্ৰি হাৰাপ্পান লেয়াৰ্ছতো পাওঁ now the matter was connecting the amri culture with the mature phase of the harappan civilization if we can somehow prove that any question
Sir, Amri to Indus Valley te asle niki?
yes yes it is located in the same region ঠিক আছে and now the question was to prove if this pre-Harappan culture shared similarities with the mature Harappan phase. See, simple eta higot ami চাওঁ ইয়াতে ধৰি লোৱা আমৰি পাইছে ঠিক আছে আমৰি কালচাৰ ইয়াতে পাইছে আৰু এইটো লেয়াৰত পাইছে মেচিয়ৰ ফেজ ঠিক আছে হাৰাপ্পান কালচাৰৰ ঠিক আছে আমি এতিয়া এইটো প্ৰুভ কৰিব লাগিব যে আমৰি কালচাৰৰ মেচিয়ৰ ফেজৰ লগত কিবা কানেকশ্যন আছে ইয়াতে যদি আমি এইটো প্ৰুভ কৰি দিব পাৰো যে সিমিলাৰিটিজ আছে বিটুইন আমৰি কালচাৰ এণ্ড দ্য মেচিয়ৰ ফেজৰ হাৰাপ্পান কালচাৰৰ লগত তেনেহলে আমি প্ৰুভ কৰি দিলো যে আমৰি কালচাৰটোৱে ইভলভ হৈ পেলাই মেচিয়ৰ ফেজত of the Harappan culture লৈকে evolve হৈছে are you following right and
Yes,
তেখেতে
sir.
কৈছিল যে আমৰি কালচাৰটো অকল আমৰিতে নাপাও আমৰি কালচাৰ is found in other sites of Sindh also য'ত Harappan sites আছে other places of Sindh where Harappan sites are located there also we find the Amri culture and now if we can link the Amri culture with the mature phase of the Harappan civilization we will prove that the Harappan civilization in fact emerged out of regional cultures. Regional cultures evolved into the mature Harappan culture. Okay, going forward, A.N. Ghosh also made certain studies, especially what is known as the Sothi pottery. ঠিক আছে Sothi pottery বুলি তেখেতে এটা pottery culture discover কৰিছিল ঠিক আছে which also was revealed in the proto Harappan strata মানে Harappan civilizationৰ আগৰ strata খিনিত এই ধৰণৰ pottery culture টো reveal হৈছিল and these characteristics meaning Sothi pottery characteristic বোৰ অন্য সাইটতো পায় this same culture is found in other Harappan sites such as Kalibangan Kot Diji even in Harappa itself Harappa সাইটৰ যদি আমি প্ৰি Harappan layers লৈকে dig কৰো we will find the Sothi culture there too alright আৰু বালুচিস্তানৰ বহুতটা সাইটছত পোৱা যায় বুলি তেখেতে কৈছিল এখেত অমলানন্দ ঘোষ alright অমলানন্দ ঘোষ's argument again is the same as that of D.N. Chakraborty ঠিক আছে so sorry N.G. Majumdar not D.N. Chakraborty so N.G. Majumdar and Amalananda Ghosh, all right, both are making the same point through the discovery of pottery cultures that date back or date previous to the timeline of the mature phase of the Indus Valley civilization. Now here, another definitive study was made by M.R. Mughal, Muhammad Rafiq Mughal, who made actually a distinctive, contribution to the study of Indus Valley civilization itself. Mr. M.R. Mughal studied all of the pre-Harappan cultures and he did not just look into the pottery culture. ঠিক আছে M.R. Mughal in his study did not just look into the pottery culture but he looked at the whole gamut of the material culture meaning artifacts tools all of the things he observed all right and after observing this pre-Harappan culture he asserted that these pre-Harappan cultures shared similarities not amongst each other not just amongst each other of course they were existing at the same point of time and therefore they will share similarity with each other but they also shared similarity with the mature phase of the Harappan culture which came later than them all right so if the pre-Harappan culture share the similarities with the mature phase it will go on to assert that the mature phase evolved out of the pre-Harappan cultures that populated this region of the Indus Valley civilization. Are we clear on these points? Yes?
Sir, repeat koribo.
Very good. Excellent. So what Mr. M.R. Mughal did was, he studied the pre-Harappan cultures, cultures such as the Sothi pottery, cultures such as the Amri pottery culture. All right. And this time around, he was not just studying the pottery, he was studying the entire gamut of material culture, which would include tools, which will include artifacts, which will include jewelry, everything. All right. And after studying these pre-Harappan cultures and comparing it with the mature phase of the Indus Valley civilization, he said the mature phase of the Indus Valley civilization shares similarity with the pre-Harappan cultures. So this will mean what? That the mature phase of the civilization came out of the pre-Harappan cultures. Yes? Now understood?
Yes, sir.
Good. And what did he name these pre-Harappan cultures taken together? What did he name them? He named them as the early Harappan phase in the evolutionary scale of the Harappan culture. The same early Harappan phase, which is put as the first point of evolution in the long history of the evolution of the Harappan civilization, 3000 to 2600 BC. Right? We talked about it in the beginning of this class. Yes?
Yes, sir.
Anyway, we are going to proceed forward. So, what did he name these cultures? He named them the early phase of the Harappan culture or the early Harappan culture. And he did not stop there. He did not just say, okay, oh, it's early phase of the Harappan culture. No, he even gave us certain features of this culture. This culture, the early phase of the Harappan culture, what kind of features they evolved? They evolved certain features such as fortified and permanent settlement. In this phase itself, rudimentary fortification. The first few fortifications and permanent settlements were beginning to emerge. All right. There was incipient urban life, meaning urbanization had begun. Incipient mane inception hoise. Okay. There was an economic surplus in this particular point in time. Craft specialization also started to emerge, and use of metal in the form of copper had also started to emerge in this phase itself. And later, all of these combined will become more refined to form what is known as the mature phase. Are we clear about this? The characteristics that he talked about. He went on to characterize the early phase of the Harappan civilization as having the following features: fortified and permanent settlement, incipient urban life, economic surplus, craft specialization, use of metal in a form of copper. These are features which we later find in the mature phase of the Harappan civilization also, but in a more sophisticated form. Yes, followed?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, good.
Sir, incipient urban life মানে কি আছে characteristic?
Incipient urban life or urbanization. How do you define urbanization, my dear fellow? First, let us talk about the definition of urbanization. How will you define a city?
Planned আছে sir.
Uh-huh. No,
Planned
not
আছে.
all cities are planned. Ohom or Guwahati, is Guwahati a planned city? If it was a planned city, we will not see so many floods. How do you define a city? How do you define urban life?
So people of different professions or different craft culture, they
Exactly.
live as a community.
That is one feature. Yes. See, Prathamote, when you define an urban life, firstly, you will have to look at the sprawl and the density. Urbanization is defined by a large settlement. Firstly, it is a large settlement with a density of population. All right, greater density of population. Urbanization is also defined by the occupation of people who have settled in this region. The occupation is not agriculture. The primary occupation are secondary or tertiary in nature and not the primary field. All right. These two features taken together form the very basics of an urban settle. In incipient urbanization, this is what we will start to see. That the settlements are becoming larger, all right, and that the density of population is growing. And the people who are settling in these large settlements with dense population, they are not primarily dealing with agriculture, but with secondary and tertiary activities. Yes, Pujisa?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good, nice question. Achha, anyway, from the above exposition, it may be surmised that the Indus Valley civilization gradually developed and indigenously developed over a long period of unbroken evolutionary history. Okay, Neolithic sites such as Mehergarh and pre-Harappan sites such as Amri represent stages in the same evolutionary scale. So, যদি 7000 to 5000 BC লৈকে মেহেরগড়ৰ নিচিনা সাইট আছে, ঠিক আছে, বা মুণ্ডিগাকৰ নিচিনা সাইট আছে, right? তে নহলে অলপ ওপৰত যদি গুচি যাও, around 4000 BC, I'm so sorry, Around 4000 BC, we start observing sites like Amri. If we go a little bit forward, then by around 3000 BC, I'm so sorry, we start to see the evolution of cities such as Kot Diji, and by 2600 BC, we start to see large cities like Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. Following how they evolve, or what kind of evolutionary scale we see? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, good. So this is the way in which the Harappan civilization, it evolved from out of the indigenous civilization. All right, we have completely lost faith in the argument that the Harappan civilization was an imported civilization, a civilization that was the result of external colonization. Yes? Done?